Hello and welcome to this latest Madaxeman video featuring this time a tabletop simulator game of Art de la Guerre between myself and Andy. Andy in this game was using the Vikings and I was giving the Carolingians a run out. It's an army that I'm in the process of painting, in that I painted a couple of bases of it, so I wanted to get it on table or on the virtual tabletop and see how it played out in a contemporary sort of historical match-up, because the Vikings and the Carolingians did have quite a long history of actually fighting. They're two quite different armies. The Vikings fairly obviously is a mass of heavy infantry, swordsmen, a few spearmen as well. It's quite a sort of stodgy is the wrong word, but tough and resilient army that grinds the opponent down, whereas the Carolingians can have quite a lot of infantry, but they're not really the strike part of the army. The Carolingians is all about a mounted strike force of knights, or proto-knights, as I guess they would have been around about that time. So straight on, having teed everything up, got everything all working on Tabletop Simulator just about, having had a bit of a break from it when real world gaming was possible. Sadly, it feels that it's coming back to tabletop and online now. But to start the game, we will just roll straight into the initial video.
This means war.
Okay, so let's have a look at this Carolingian army then. I've opened up Tabletop Simulator here. The Carolingians is one of the armies that I've actually got already. So let's just click into it and see the standard template of troops that you actually build this army from, or that someone has created, one of the more skilled people than me who created, to see us bringing in from. So you've got here kind of a basic range of medium cavalry, heavy cavalry, slightly different figures here. Let's look at these a bit closer and zoom in over here. So you've got some sort of charging cavalry, cavalry with swords, a bit more armor. Some of the other ones, a couple of different types of light horse, they're quite nicely animated. Solid block of spearmen with round shields, they're all cockade, slightly different colours as well, which is neat. Some funky bowmen, these are cool little sprites actually, they look quite meaty, don't they? Good little toys, a few javelin men, light infantry crossbow, light infantry bow with some lovely little arrows on the back, and a bit of a levy as well. So for this army, I've actually created it already. It's one of my saved objects. And let me just try and remember which one of these it is, because I've done a couple of different versions of it. I think it's probably this one. Let's just pull this into here and you can see how I've actually constructed the army. So this was the army I actually ended up using. This is the list, which I've got from Tabletop Simulator. Let's just flip to an overhead view so that we can actually see the list a lot more quickly, or a lot more easily. So the way I try to put this list together, picking the strategist because that's kind of cool, but also I think you do need to try and get a good initiative so that you can make sure you've got the ability to sweep some of the terrain out of the way. There's not really much in the way of rough terrain troops in this army, and it does rely on the cavalry, so you need to create some big open flanks to make it work, and having a strategist gives you that bit much more control over terrain. So here, slightly unusually with this central command, to start with, I've maxed out on the spearmen. This is probably more spearmen than I'm going to own in 15 mil. Maybe I should buy some more, but I thought it would just be interesting to see if I could use something that just isn't particularly good necessarily against Vikings to try and be a bit of a target and draw them forwards. And in so doing, they would see spearmen and they'll all be 200 axemen as something they just really want to get to grips with. So if I held back with those, it may actually give the two cavalry commands more opportunity to work one or both flanks. So the top one, this one with an embedded general, it's actually not an embedded general, separate general. So this has effectively got 6 impetuous cavalry, 6 charging cavalry, 4 impetuous, 2 more drilled impact ones, elite, like cavalry javelin, just because you have to really. And then this third command is tiny. Again, looking at it, maybe it should have had an embedded general, would seem to make more sense. It's kind of cheap, but this was something to act as an extra for this command, really to bulk it out. because after sticking all these heavy spearmen in, you really did start to struggle. So let's flip back and actually look at some of the troops in more detail. So what I did here, and this is probably worth looking at, to differentiate the impetuous heavy cavalry from the impetuous medium cavalry, and then the drilled cavalry at the back. What I've done, I've taken the standard units. In fact, I'll just grab one here, and this may actually be easy to see to do, to make the impetuous ones a bit more irregular. So this is kind of about as much modding as I actually ever managed to do in Tabletop Simulator, which it's actually quite easy. I'm not doing much, so it is quite easy. So this is using the combine tool. Just click on it so that you get that chain link there. And the way this seems to work, if I'm articulating it properly, is that this is actually 4 objects. It's the baseboard and 3 cavalrymen all kind of glued together. So to do anything funky with them, the first thing is you need to unglue that object. I guess it's a bit like using Microsoft Word to edit images, where you group and ungroup them to put it together. So what you do is you left click on the base, or in fact anywhere on this combined object, and then go on to the baseboard, which in this is literally the surface of the table. So it's nowhere. It's not an object there. It's just the table surface. So once you've done that, they should be unlinked. So very important. Go back to the grab tool. Make sure you change to this, and suddenly you can move these independently. Move them about, pick them up, drop them in. And what I was doing, just to make them slightly more dynamic, using the Q and the E buttons just to rotate them slightly. You've got to be careful. Sometimes if they get too close together, they bump into each other. But this, I was thinking, this is a way of just making that a little bit more irregular. And what you can do, as you can see I've done here, I've actually picked different horsemen. In fact, let's grab this guy, do exactly the same to him, with his slightly different shields. Let's take him to pieces as well. Go back to the grab tool. So I actually pick one of these guys off here, swap him over. So you've now got a slightly more irregular look, and you can see he doesn't. Yeah, he'll go quite close, but there's bits he won't, because the figures are sort of occupy more space than you can actually see. So to tie them back together, you go back to the combine tool, and as you can see, they're all highlighted separately. They're all separate things. You just link them back to the base. So here, that links to the base. This one links to the base. This one links to the base. Go back to the grab tool, and all of a sudden you've got a new object, which allows. Whereas if this one, which is 3 separate ones, if I pick it up, you can actually end up moving the bits and pieces off it, or grab the wrong one. This one, it's just one thing. It all goes together. But look, enough of that. You can see here, just move these guys all out of the way because they're not really needed. Oh, we've thrown him away. Let's toss that one over there too. So this is what the army looks like. You've got this big cavalry command, a bit of light horse. You've got a huge block of infantry, a couple more. These are the mounted archers. These are the mounted charging cavalry as well, and a bit of a skirmish screen. And then this 3 extra command, which I think is fairly obviously going to end up going on a flank march. So that's how the army's been put together, and how it's actually deployed.
This means war.
So let's have a look at the setup here on the battlefield. We've just done the first move or so. There's a waterway over on the left. Looks like a river, actually a waterway. And the Carolingians have pushed a load of cavalry down on the right hand side, the ones that are moving forwards here. Have got all their infantry stuck in the middle in a block. The Vikings have deployed a bit more conventionally. They've also actually got a huge block of Huscarls in the middle as well, and have sort of left this left flank hanging a little. And over on their right, the left, as you look at it just out of shot, you'll remember seeing a hill that was there next to the waterway. And again, here we go. The Vikings have got some of their fast-moving infantry who presumably are going to hope to run up and take on that hill. But the Carolingians have moved first, and the big infantry command that they have in the centre does have a couple of medium cavalry with it, they've rushed forwards and actually taken the hill already. But there's only the two of them. They're kind of dangerous to medium foot, but two of them against a load of bowmen, loads of swordsmen, some elite troops. That is going to be kind of tricky. So the obvious thing that's missing here is the tiny Carolingian command, and that's off table to the right on a flank march. It's a small enough command to gamble by and leave them off. So hopefully they're okay. So the Vikings, as you see, have sort of wheeled outwards a bit to try and stop this onrushing tide of Carolingian cavalry getting past their flank. And their sort of screening command, a couple of light horse and a cavalryman, who the Carolingians were just trying to mug, really, with a rapid advance by their light horse screen to sweep the enemy light horse away. And I think that's actually what's been done here, just risking a charge, sending it in. The enemy light horse evade, and the Carolingian light horse cavalry actually charge into the one mounted cavalryman from the Vikings, because they may as well. The issue is just shoving all of those fast cavalry down that right hand side before the Vikings can turn as quickly as possible. So sweeping out of the way anything that's in their way is worthwhile doing. A few you'll have seen just a moment ago, just by that red dice, a few of the spearmen have kind of crept forwards. They want to really draw those huscarls towards them. It's a big army, this Carolingian. I think it's sort of at the 24 mark, pretty chunky, given how many decent quality troops there are in there as well. So they can probably afford to lose a few, and it'd be much better to have some of these huscarls who are just charging off the Viking skirmish screen at the moment, have some of them busy trying to get to grips with Carolingian spearmen, rather than all of them managing to sort of shut the door on that big advance of Carolingian cavalry. So the Vikings they kind of got not too much to fight really in the middle. The Carolingian infantry, other than this sort of tempting piece, aren't coming forward too much. The two medium cavalry, seeing just how many bowmen and infantry are facing them, have sort of turned and run away. They've kind of done their job in slowing that advance down, just preventing those Vikings double, triple march moving and just getting onto that hill very, very quickly. Because the game from a Carolingian perspective, from my perspective, is going to be all about on this right hand side, can this wall of cavalry sweep round and start to roll up the line of Vikings, the line of huscarls. And this is just all about, is there a way to gain any extra movement or just throw stuff past the end of that Viking line before it moves up. So there's those couple of light horse, they're possibly a target. Just want to get into them, stop them being there, tie them in place, give the Vikings a bit of a problem, and just see how many of these other cavalry can get through. Now, my light horse have kind of got stuck on the enemy cavalryman. So what we're doing here, slightly kind of engineered move. So what you saw happens there was, first of all, the cavalryman raced forward and blocked the Viking general from evading. Then the light horse he was facing broke off from him. Can do that because it's a faster moving troop type, allowing a wall of Carolingian cavalry just to slam into him. So he's now, that cavalryman's pretty much the only thing standing in the way of all of those Carolingian cavalry getting around the flank of the Vikings. So you'll see here the spearmen pushed up a little again, kind of still just waving furiously at the Viking wall of huscarls, trying to tempt some of them forward, stop them all getting busy, trying to block off that cavalry. And I think there's a bowman embedded in the middle of that big old long line of huscarls as well, who's pinging away at the cavalry, trying to charge past their flank, and the general is moving up to support it. So on that right hand side, I think my cavalry are now starting to get into a bit of a traffic jam. They could do with really sweeping that lone cavalryman away and possibly even those light horse very, very quickly, because otherwise, as you can see here, Andy always inching forwards, moving remarkably quickly. Actually, it's always quicker than it feels. It's trying to move big blocks of troops is always trickier than it feels as well. So that's always a bit of a problem sometimes in this. But so yeah, that group, that big block of infantry there, what it does, it just kind of inches forward, moves forward, straight forward one measurement unit. That allows it then to slide across one measurement unit, one base width as well, and then wheels a little bit more, making them much easier to kind of close that door than it thinks. But there's still masses and masses of Viking foot here. just creeping forwards with almost nothing in their way other than just time and space. I guess it really is a proper trade-off between a battle that I don't want to have and don't want to even fight over on this flank. These two cavalry are just sat there teasing the Vikings forwards before they'll probably withdraw again. And then on this side, this is just all about getting the dice in, rolling in, trying to kill all those light horse. But unfortunately, that's not working. The Viking light horse are fighting fantastically well, doing a much better job than they should do. And but looks like their general's just gone down there, so that's going to cause them a lot of problems. And with that general being gone, here comes the flank march as well. So all of a sudden, another 3 impetuous cavalry appear on that flank, and suddenly you're looking there at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, possibly 10 impetuous cavalry, all trying to just race round the end of that Viking flank. It's starting to look like somebody may have to actually fight the end of the line. No one really wants to fight it frontally at all, but someone's possibly going to have to. But actually, looking at that tiny command, picking up 1, 2, 3 of the Vikings before you really get to fighting, it's possibly not too bad a thing. So this is just me trying to work out how can I get into and past that line. It's not kind of the cleverest situation to be, just throwing people past it, but they're impetuous, they're spontaneous, they start to move on their own, and once they're there, it suddenly starts to cause the Vikings an awful lot of problems just to get there. So here, with some sort of spare pips, what I want to do is really split that big block of Huscarls. I think there's 4 Huscarls in the bowmen, and I don't want them all to be able to turn and react to the cavalry. So pushing my own 4 spearmen up against them, I'm thinking if I can pull 2, 3 of those Huscarls away, it only leaves a couple, and then you have to occupy someone frontally if you're going to roll through their flanks. Otherwise, they're just going to spin around as a block and kind of deal with you. So yeah, this one, it turned 90 degrees, charged, hit, and then conformed to the back of my cavalry. Yeah, it's not ideal at all. But again, what it's doing is breaking up that line. And one of the other things I'm looking at here in terms of playing the game is the Huscarls are really tough. They are going to bounce off my cavalry, or my cavalry bounce off them if they attack them. But I want to try and isolate that one bow unit that's stuck in the middle of the line. And now, because we've kind of tempted the end Huscarl to be peeled off the line, that does start to expose that bow. So he's a much juicier target. Definitely worth throwing some cavalry straight at that, and taking the risk, even leaving 1 overlap, or maybe even, well, there won't be 2, but perhaps 1 overlap. Here, the rest of the Viking army is just inching forwards, but that distance between the spear units, they're now sort of slightly broken up Carolingian spear units, they're all fairly sort of small. It's going to take a while to get it, and suddenly we've now wiped out the rest of the light horse, and there's no mounted troops here. It's just slow moving infantry who are trying to hold against this huge tide of cavalry coming their way. Looks like the charge in the rear has not been a total wipeout. My cavalry survived it. That's probably a trade-off for the general, the Viking mounted general, and his light horse surviving longer than they should as well. But now even those Vikings are starting to have just too many cavalry around them, and I think there's really just a couple of isolated units of Viking heavy foot there that if they suddenly fall, you're looking at a hole on the back line of the Carolingian army, the Viking army, that's as deep as their deployment area. And here we go. This is throwing cavalry into that bowman, that exposed bowman, and then just suddenly using that sheer weight of numbers that appears to try and overwhelm those other 2 isolated units, using the mix of the impetuous ones and then those 2 non-impetuous to have a little bit more control. Look, there you can see that was the cavalry disappearing back, falling back on that other flank as well. I think that's the 2 drilled non-impetuous cavalry, fairly obviously, over there. And there's sort of a curved battle line starting to reassemble, actually. Again, you can see here, just counting up, there's now 3 Huscarls, and we're into the bowman on the end, and run straight over him. Bowmen are very squishy when hit by top quality knights. So suddenly there's now 3 Huskarls, and they're facing 4 spearmen, clearly 1-for-1. The Huskarls are way better, but with marauding Lancer cavalry on the back, that's just going to be a huge problem for them very quickly. And we're just again mopping up or sweeping out everything in that that extra piece. And it's interesting, I guess, looking at it in retrospect, that the arrival of those 3 medium cavalry from the flank march really was the thing that looks like it's tipped it and given huge weight of numbers to create some overlaps and things like this. Now, I think at this point in the game we lost the audio between the two of us. We were using the in-game chat function, literal chat function, but something sort of went wrong or got unplugged. I think it might have been possibly triggered by my headset speakers running out of battery or something. So there's a bit where we weren't able to talk to each other for a while, and the audio was slightly out of sync. But this is just all where Andy's trying to get a sort of coherent attacking line to try and pick apart what's possible. But there's still a lot of this Carolingian army is quite a long way away, and you can see there it's been caught in trying to drag infantry out of the middle to get into that long line of spears, and we're quite a few turns into the game now, and the Vikings have been unable to really get any of their infantry into much of a position where they can fight the kind of things they want to fight. And with these sort of heavy infantry armies, the aim of the game is to force the enemy to get into a war of attrition. And there's nothing super gamey or anything. The Carolingians have just sat back. They've just sat there and said, come on, you can fight our infantry, move up, we'll move some of them towards you, but not all of them. This is sort of a tempting target, and this kind of refused left wing, but even with the threat of the those 2 medium cavalry, can't really be ignored by a mostly medium infantry army there. The threat of those as the Vikings start to move forwards, but this really is all about trying to overrun them on the Carolingian right, the Viking left, with all of these cavalry who are still finding it tough to finish off the rest of these infantry. They are still resilient. They're elite, a lot of them. They've got armour. That gives them an extra layer of resilience as well, particularly when the medium cavalry are kind of coming into it. But there is still starting to be flanks and overlaps pretty much most of the time there for the Carolingians to exploit and move into. As again, nice. You can see it does sort of shape up as a second sort of diagonal battle line, how the Vikings have pushed out, but unusually, very unusually for me, the Carolingian infantry have just sat tight and just said, come and get us, and everything has been putting into 2 commands with the extra 3 medium cavalry. So 2 commands, 2 pips, 2 sets of pip dice being put into turning the flank of that Viking army there. So the Vikings have finally got in. They've gone in against the spearmen here, taking a fight. They've started to level up, but you can just see as turn by turn goes, the more and more cavalry is starting to appear around the back, and I think it's very soon that those cavalry will be able to clatter into the rear of the engaged to the front Vikings. They've already racked up quite a few points with picking up the light horse, picking up the bowmen, picking up the cavalrymen, and eroding 2 or 3 of the Huskarl infantry units on that flank. So at this point within the game, we decided to call it, and that was from this starting position, or this is a starting position to 1. You can see how the game sort of swung.
This means war.
So there it was, a couple of hours of fighting. The gameplay was speeded up 8 times to make that gameplay run in about 15 minutes of your time. And one of the things I always find kind of satisfying about any sort of rules is the outcome here was very much an outcome of proper tactics. It was about looking at the the way the armies fight, what they were good at, and in this case it was cavalry. They couldn't take on the enemy infantry head on. That wouldn't have worked at all. So the Carolingian army was very much forced or compelled to attempt to outflank the Vikings, and really had to just hurl everything it had at getting past that flank and getting in position to roll up the army, and doubling down with the flank march as well, and that's what they did in the end. So it just sort of feels like proper tactics work, nothing gamey, nothing to do with the mechanics of the rules. That would have worked in, or should have worked in any set, I think. So nice and straightforward for ADLG. Nice to be able to cobble together a slightly customized army for Tabletop Simulator, and another good game. So thank you, Andy, and I'll be doing a few more of these videos as well over the coming weeks.